Okay, so what I want to do is show a reductive method for approaching skull drawing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually just tone this section of my paper so you can still see kind of an additive drawing of a skull. I'm going to use my vine charcoal. And you can see my vine charcoal is actually pretty faint. And I'm using a good amount of it to try to work up even just a section of my drawing. And then I'm going to use my chamois to blend out and create a nice base. Sometimes if you use your chamois to pick up the charcoal bits that you can't even hold, you can blend them out a little bit further. I don't know if you've noticed that I use the same chamois for all of the class because I like the charcoal buildup on it. I like that I can make marks with my paper towel. It's not very effective for erasing in the way that a clean one would be. So because of that, I've got both my hard eraser and my kneaded eraser next to me. So we're going to take those little pieces off. What I do always when working with the skull, and I'm going to do this in a 3/4 view instead of a straight on, is I'm still going to use my vine charcoal a little bit additively, right, to draw in my basic shapes, which are my circle, my trapezoid, and then I'm gonna find my lines, which are my vertical axis, my eye line, my nose line, and my jawline. Okay? Now, if I want to work reductively, right, what I'm going to start doing is focusing on areas that are highlighted. And for me, those areas are predominantly the cheekbones, the orbital bone, and the nasal bone. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start chiseling out some of those spaces. Right now I'm working on the right eye cavity. And I'm seeing how this bone goes up in space and then back a little bit. I'm seeing how there's a divot underneath this nose bone. All right. This shape is very small and narrow. And if I make it too wide, I can always go back in. Some of my vine charcoal. Again, I'm working on this orbital bone, right? I think it's an orbital bone. I'm not really positive on that one. Which goes back in space and then stops because it's foreshortened. And then I can see how it starts wider at the bottom, works its way up. There's a cat running underneath my drawing. All right, so you can see it's almost like drawing in a mask, okay? Do you see what I mean? Like I've got my eyes kind of marked in space. And then what I can start doing is erasing out the light spaces, kind of where light is hitting my skull. Now, working reductively is a really quick way of creating a lot more drama in a drawing, right? Because I'm already starting with pretty high contrast. What I can then do is decide like where my background is going to be, which will be my darkest dark. And then this, which is a little bit darker, right? I can start going in, doing a little bit of shading with my fine charcoal so that I can establish where my darkest darks are. I can see that my nose that I'm drawing on is pretty off. There's something happening here. It's this space. I made the nose cavity a little too wide. And too heart-shaped. So I'm going to erase back and then try to get that more accurate. I'm going to show where my jawbone is, right? The top of my jawbone, see where my jawline is, right? I think I moved everything up a little bit off of my axes because I shifted how I'm sitting while I'm working. Don't shift how you sit when you're drawing from life. Rule number 1. I don't know why I did it. So I'm seeing how this jawbone connects to my eye bone, right? I'm looking at this shape. And I'm gonna start shading in that kind of negative space. I still have kind of an idea where my nose line is so that I can erase out some of that jawbone shape. Right? So what I'm erasing out is these shapes right now. And this kind of negative space. But I can still see a little bit of my skull back there, so I'm going to use my eraser to bring that back in as well. And what I'm doing is I'm using my eraser, and you can see I'm like really mashing it into my finger to draw with. Okay, that's how it helps to draw reductively, is to really use this for the flexible tool that it is, instead of just trying to erase with one big blob shape, okay? For some reason making my skull frowning. I'm not really sure why I'm doing that. Now I can see that this shape is really curved, and I can shade in a little bit. And then because, you know, I'm drawing from my reference, and I've mentioned that the skull that I'm drawing from is a little bit broken, the jawbone pops out here and here, going back in space. Okay? And there's a big space underneath where I'm looking up into its teeth a little bit from my perspective. And that's how I would draw reductively, okay? You can see it's much smudgier, there's much fewer outlines. I can go back in and kind of find some of the smaller details and shadings and hatch marks. We can stay very expressive with this, right? But it just gives you an idea, okay? If I want a really harsh white to show that something's very bright, I'm gonna go in with my hard eraser and really work my paper surface. And then I'm not gonna rub it because I'm gonna smudge everything, okay? But that should give you an idea of where you can get. Again, still not that worried about the teeth. Why am I drawing arrows? I can actually point, because I can work those up once everything is accurate in perspective. I can do things like start making small gestures for where I do see some of the teeth lines, which are more on the right side of my image. But I'm not concerned with drawing perfect teeth. All right? So that's a quick example of how to draw a reductive skull using your kneaded eraser, your hard eraser, and your vine charcoal. And I hope that that is helpful in providing some options for you. Okay?